Yo, B, let's go.
You may have seen the clip and maybe heard word of mouth, yet another podcast. Man, what could it be about? Is it truth or opinion? A couple of contradictions. We're here to challenge tradition and twist your vision. So we set on a mission to bring you rebel wisdom.
Welcome back to another episode of Rebel Wisdom. I'm Julian here with my boy B, and today we're going to be talking about genetic engineering. A somewhat hot topic, certainly nothing I'm qualified in, but that has a lot of just ramifications within humanity if we, continue these experiments, this testing, this research. So nonetheless, a juicy topic that we can kind of go back and forth on and just discuss a lot of avenues of genetic engineering. B and I don't have any degrees or anything. Just again, something that is, you could argue, controversial and that we want to explore a little bit. So before we get started, B, I was thinking about just kind of giving a quick overview of what genetic engineering is, and in very layman's terms, and then the most used method of that, which is CRISPR. I was just going to kind of give a quick overview, but before I do that, is there anything you wanted to kind of throw out there?
No, go ahead. I think it'll be good to have a baseline before we continue the conversation.
Okay. And then I'll let you add to that as well after. So when talking about genetic engineering, right, it is quite literally taking the genetics of an organism or the DNA and modifying that in a way to change, erase, enhance a certain aspect of whatever that living thing is. So throughout this, we could be talking about plants, we could be talking about animals, humans, etc. So again, genetic engineering is pretty literal, but the term CRISPR is I guess what we say, the most common method of genetically engineering, and CRISPR, CRISPR, and it's actually an acronym. So I'm going to read you real quick what the acronym is. It's super techie, way over my head, but I'll say it so we all baseline it. And then more importantly, I'll just say kind of what the purpose of CRISPR is. So CRISPR stands for, I'll probably jack this up, cluster interspaced short palindromic repeats, whatever that means. But more importantly, basically it's a technology that research scientists use to selectively modify DNA of living organisms. So that's kind of what I focus on. And we can get into, I guess, a little bit later, like maybe how it's done. But again, I don't have a background in this. I watched a couple videos on YouTube. It's pretty cool just to show with a little animated breakdown how CRISPR actually replaces these segments of DNA. But just to baseline it, that's pretty much what CRISPR is and the leading method in modifying. Do you want to add anything to that?
It was interesting because the CRISPR method, like you're saying, there's other methods that you can do the genome editing, but the other ways were much expensive and not systemized in a way, so you have to do it every single time for a unique situation. And I'm sure you can imagine the time intensive tasks that's associated with that. But with CRISPR, apparently, again, this is coming from the articles I read and YouTube videos as well, but it's basically a natural way for the human to fight off bacteria, but then humans have figured out a way to change the RNA. That's the CRISPR method, and you can dictate that protein to go to a particular strand in the DNA, and then it'll cut it for you. And then once that cut is done, you can insert a template for the nucleus to follow to rebuild that cell or the strand of DNA in a way that you want it to. So that's where the editing or the deletion or the addition of the DNA comes from. And like Julian said, it's the most effective way while being the cheapest. Even though it's not necessarily cheap, it's just the cheapest. That's why it's picking up a lot of steam. And I think it was introduced originally in 2010. Some big notable faces came in the scene. And one of the co-founders of CRISPR technology, she was a female doctor, and she received a Nobel Peace Prize back in 2020. So I thought that was pretty fascinating. Definitely early stages of a technology that we're experiencing, and I'm sure we're going to talk about the future implications of this technology as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Another, I've heard it referred to as a couple different terms, but one I kind of liked is like molecular scissors, and kind of how you described it, how it can cut a segment of the DNA or the genome, whatever, to replace it. And then you also use the term naturally, and then it can, I guess, naturally replicate what it is that you're trying to edit, which I think is super cool. uh, And how scientists can program it, I guess, to get this exact location in the DNA chain or whatever. I mean, this is truly mind blowing to me. The advancement of this, hearing it makes it sound like some like sci-fi stuff that we would have seen in a movie,
Yeah.
years ago, and which is crazy, bro, because that's kind of the theme of our lives lately. Like a lot of sci-fi stuff going on these days, and it's just like in one of the videos I watched, I don't even know if it might have just been some random stuff I was watching, or it might have been related to this. But a guy, it was like a TV show host. He was interviewing somebody, and he was like, the guy he was interviewing was the specialist in the field. I think it was on genetic engineering. He was talking about it, and he was like, "There's no way to predict these advancements, or predict maybe like we implement these things, what'll happen." And the host that was hosting the show was like, "Well, I feel like there kind of is a way to predict all the stuff we're talking about or that's happening lately." He's like, "I've seen in movies growing up or way in my life." So he's like, the movies seem to always come true. He's like, maybe these movies, he's like, somebody knows what's going to happen, because these movies aren't just guessing stuff. Like a lot of the things that happen in these movies are coming true. So maybe there is somebody somewhere kind of can predict how these things will develop or affect humanity. And I was like, I mean, yeah, a movie is a super, not technical way to predict something, but like there's some truth in it. There are a lot of things we've seen or watched end up manifesting. So I don't know. I just thought that was kind of a funny takeaway
Hmm.
on how maybe not genetic engineering, but genetic engineering or things like it, other futuristic concepts. AI is a big one. There may be some validity in, like, just, I don't know, entertainment space, like what they predict. But yeah, I think CRISPR was definitely like bringing it back in, kind of the leading method, I guess, in this space, and probably when we refer to genetic engineering, like mainly what we're talking about. So let's get into some kind of some real world occurrences that have used genetic engineering. Usually we like to kick off episodes that we will relate to whatever the topic is, how it's affected our lives, how we've seen whatever the topic is, how we've experienced it, how we used it, whether it's a ideology or whether it's something physical, whether it's a personal finance method. This is one I think I can confidently say I don't think either of us have had any personal experience with genetic engineering, but we read and we hear about things. So you wanna throw out like something you've read, watched, heard about, and then I got some examples as well.
Yeah, I thought it was cool. I mean, the technology itself has already gone from in the lab scene, and obviously it's still in the lab scene in terms of making it better overall as a technology, but it has gone through clinical trials and has been tested on live humans in real life, which I thought
Yes.
was it's crazy. But the common theme that I am getting from a lot of the real life examples today is, it is they are treating it mostly for, at least in the human space. We'll stay in the human for now, but it seems like the use case for humans in 2025 is like a deadly disease related, and usually they have exhausted all other treatment methods that's traditionally treated to disease, or to treat a particular cancer or disease or of some sort. But then they're like, hey, like the things that we're used to doing and fixing or curing isn't working. Let's try CRISPR, and it has resulted very, very positive results. And one of those cases is sickle cell disease. And like
Mhm.
Julian said, I am no way a scientist or an expert in the space, but from what I read, sickle cell is basically caused by one like DNA structure molecule, one of the chromosomes, something like that. It's
Mhm.
basically being able to edit by one thing that CRISPR can edit, and they have successfully edited that gene. And in the cases where CRISPR was used to treat sickle cell, there has been multiple cases already. And in 93% of the cases, they don't even feel like side effects after within a year. So I'm saying like they're able to cure it already. But then, and with a success rate of 93% being they don't have crazy side effects after. 7%, they may still have side effects of sickle cell, which apparently comes with like a lot of pain. But I think it's kind of crazy. Success rate is almost, pretty much 100% with, side effects being suppressed to a level of 93%. I thought that was kind of insane.
That is right. Super. Like you said, it probably hasn't been done that much, but for the case that has been done, a 93% success rate is pretty crazy. I think sickle cell. I'm trying to think. I think it's when the shape of the cell is literally like a sliver, almost like a crescent
Yeah.
moon. Yeah. I've met a couple people that have it actually. And I think from what I've heard, those when the cells aren't round and they become pointed at the ends, like you it can like latch on and maybe like cause internal like irritation because those cells are now, I guess, prickly in a sense.
Mm.
So that may be some of that pain, but just kind of crazy concept. But even cooler that here we might have something that can, with a high success rate, get rid of that. Super dope.
I think it's just cool as a narrative because people thought sickle cell was like an incurable disease for a very,
Oh, for
very long
sure.
time.
For sure.
And then now going from something of like I think it's really good how you said it of like a sci-fi imaginary thing,
Hmm.
but then we're crossing that line to pull that into real life. And I like with something deemed impossible becoming possible, like imagine the doors that this opens.
Yes.
There's no impossible now, right? So
Yes.
I think it's crazy. Sorry, I
Speaking
cut
of,
you off. Go ahead.
oh, no. I was just gonna go into another example, trying to stay with the human examples,
Mhm.
and talking about opening doors. This isn't just gene editing. B talked about sickle cell. This process can be replicated for other scenarios. Like it's not just sickle cell, which is cool. So I'm gonna bring up Down syndrome, and I have a cousin that has syndrome. So this is maybe a more personal or at least slightly like relatable example talking about this specific example. So Down syndrome is pretty much when the individual that has Down syndrome has an extra chromosome. I think like the 21st chromosome 21, and it leads to differences in physical and cognitive development, right? So, the person may be physically less capable, or their physical movements maybe not standard of a full, I'll say normal functioning human as we know it. And then again, there's cognitive differences as well. But since Down syndrome is genetically, they have extra genetic material. CRISPR can literally remove that extra material, which can show improvements or I guess corrections to those physical abnormalities or the cognitive difference as well, which is equally like incredible. I don't know if there was anything, targeting Down syndrome on the market or, like you said, sickle cell for what we know was incurable. I don't know if the same goes for Down syndrome, but nonetheless, nothing that I know of. But here's another example of how this technology is targeting DNA and genetic material modified in a way to, supposedly enhance human life. Uh,
Mhm.
Again, equally incredible in my eyes. Yeah.
So, this is still within the human space, but a little bit branching off with the help of animals, right? But basically, like, imagine like these technologies are getting tested in lab tested animals first, right? Obviously, before we go into humans, but a good crossover with that is with organ transplants, right? Whatever it may be, could be a heart, it could be a kidney, whatever it is, right? They have shown like in real life a successful heart transplant from a pig to a human, and I thought that was insane. And apparently, it went through 10 different genome edits to make the pig heart compatible with humans because I like with a lot of this is true in blood as well, but you can't just take a random organ and slap it on a body. It's gonna reject that organ. Your body's gonna reject it. So basically, some of the key like edits that they made into this pig heart was they made it they made like 6 edits so they can make the pig farm or pig heart compatible in a way that the human body is not going to reject it. They made an additional edit on containing the size of the pig heart growth so it doesn't grow too big for the human. And I don't, and then there's obviously a couple more, 3 more edits that was made. I don't exactly know what the 3 are, but basically, like, this guy, his heart was failing. We had no other choice, but so they did the CRISPR method with the pig heart and transplanted into this guy, and the body accepted it. And unfortunately, he did pass away like 2 months after the transplant. But you got to keep in mind, he was about to die before this transplant. So it did prolong his life by 2 months. And just thinking of this technology that's at level 1, right? Level 0, we're just getting into it. Like, in the future, like, it might get to a point where there's no such thing as waiting on the organ donors list, right? Like you, there's no wait time. Like, you just get a genetically modified animal heart, and it works perfectly fine in humans. I thought that's a crazy, crazy, crazy direction that we're going. Crazy in a good way, I think.
I agree. I would argue good. Just imagine, this is kind of random, but like being that guy, and if he was fortunate enough to live on, but just being like, yeah, I have a pig heart, or like a pig organ, like it's just, that would just be wild. But
Yeah.
the concept is truly mind blowing. Again, very, very much sci-fi. I'm gonna keep it going on the trend of animal. I'm following your lead here. If you don't have any other like
No, go ahead.
big human stories, okay. One I heard about earlier this year, 2025, was this term alone is like, every time I say it, I have to pause. The re-extinction, or excuse me, de-extinction of an animal. Just like what? So, someone goes extinct, it's in all known cases gone from the planet, like no longer exist. And there was an animal that has reached the de-extinction, so they brought back using gene editing. And if you haven't heard of this case, it is the dire wolf. Now, I'll talk through it a little bit. It might not be a genetic replica, but they say like genetic associations, and they used genetic material from a dire wolf like fossils to bring this back. But it was a company called Colossal Biosciences, and they're the company responsible for successfully bringing back the dire wolf. And apparently other animals were attempted to be brought back. Like, I know the woolly mammoth was one, and I think it was some type of like rodent that they tried as well for over like 10 years. This is the premise of the company. They tried to de-extinct animals, and they were first successful. And I'm pretty sure the first successful attempt period was this dire wolf. They're a biotechnology company, and they brought back the dire wolf that was extinct for over thousands of years. They say they say over 10,000 years.
Hmm.
Again, hard to fathom when you're talking about something that doesn't exist and brought back. But they used the genetic material, spliced it, and then artificially impregnated a gray wolf, because that was the animal that does exist that was most similar. And then they were able to, that the gray wolf had, a full pregnancy or whatever, and it had 3 offspring. So, unless they've redone this since, but at the point in which this was successful, they recreated 3 dire wolves. They have names, and named Romulus, Remus, and Khaleesi, and that was like the successful de-extinction with with genetically modifying and then impregnating a wolf to bring back. It's like, I'm having a hard time wrapping my head around it. And this is funny because I don't watch Game of Thrones, but I know, super popular show. I know plenty of people that does, like my girlfriend does. But apparently this wolf is featured in that show. So like, Thronies, I guess they call them, are people that are really into the show, were like super hype about this news, because now you have 3 living examples of this dire wolf. And those names that the company named them may be names from the show. I don't know or not. Somebody that watches it can confirm that. But nonetheless, I would say a huge leap for, I can say humanity. Again, this is just for animals, right? But this is also showing not only what we can do in the human space, but with examples of like the pig producing for humans or creating new animals or bringing back extinct animals, we're dabbling in the human space and the animal space, and there's some plant examples as well, but truly, truly mind-blowing stuff. So I remember when I heard that, I was like, bro, this is just I don't know, I was super interested in it.
Yeah, it
You got
is
any
cool.
other?
Yeah, like I mean, you can just imagine them creating these animals, and I could just literally see them like at a zoo or something,
Oh, right.
right? Like I, that would be like it's like the Columbus Zoo has the first
Yeah.
the mammoth, or since whatever. Like
Whatever it
that.
is, yeah.
I mean, whether it's right or wrong, that would be a crazy leap
Hmm.
in this space in general.
Yeah, we'll get into
And
that
crossing
too.
over to the plants that you mentioned, and in Japan, I mean, you got to realize, okay, so the CRISPR, because testing it on humans is obviously very highly controversial,
Yeah.
but plants, let's just make it better, right? Like, I mean, we already do that with a selective breeding anyway, but
Hmm.
basically they were able to create this tomato in Japan that has a lot of GABA levels, GABA levels, which is linked to lowering stress and blood pressure. And
Heck yeah.
I found it interesting because you got to imagine you would have to have like laws and like just structures and systems at the global scale. You can't, this is not a technology that like, oh, you can do this in this country, but you can't do this in this country. It has to be
Hmm.
across it should be similar across the world, because otherwise
Right.
there's going to be a lot of crazy illegal or like illegal stuff in other countries, whereas, this country's legal. But I thought it was interesting for the plant space because what they deem illegal and legal is whether you can do this without CRISPR or not. So with the GABA increased GABA level
Mm.
tomato, they can do this with selective breeding. They can achieve this. But with CRISPR, it just makes it much, 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 much faster and straight to the point. So that's going to be a crazy advancement in agriculture as well. And obviously, like with today, like we always talk about how food is so abundant in the United States, but this can make food abundant for the entire world. Like you're talking about, let's say, I don't know, like crops that's naturally repelling these bugs that might eat them, naturally repelling these diseases, and then all you have to do is edit
That's
this
crazy.
gene to fight off this cancer that's always been problematic, or something like that, right? Or we always, what do we hear? Like we had eggs prices crazy expensive because
Going
we
up,
had some
yep.
kind of disease in the chicken, right? They
Yeah.
can CRISPR these chickens to make these diseases not affect them at all. Obviously, the technology is already moving in the agricultural space much faster than the human space, I feel like, just because it's less regulated. And I mean, you mess up a plant here or two, like who cares, right? So I'm excited for the agriculture space to see what kind of crazy plants and foods that it could be scary as well, but just imagine eating a potato that has like all the vitamins you need or something like that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I just imagine a future world where like we're not even eating. It's like this pill for all of these nutrients, like you don't even this pill for all of
Yeah.
this, and we just survive off pill, or like some injection that just gives us literally everything we need. At this point, dude, if I would have said that 15 years ago, I'd be like, "Yeah, that's dumb." But now, like I don't know. But you brought up some really good points on, I think, some fringe benefits of not only making something more abundant or healthier, but also benefits from genetically modifying that, second, third order effects, such as preventing disease, whatever. And I'll probably touch on that a little bit too. The food thing I'm going to mention is a banana, which I literally had one this morning. But I think I don't know if they're accredited with the first company doing it, but the one I read is a biotech firm in Norwich, I think. And they're creating they did some gene editing in bananas to prevent or prolong it from browning. You get a banana, it's like usually like
Mm.
green and then it goes to the yellow phase. And then when it goes bad, it starts browning and then it's bad. But they prevented a way to, again, I don't think prevent, but prolong its maybe ripeness, to prevent it, to delay it from browning, which is also interesting because, they noted that this could help. A lot of bananas are transported or in areas that don't natively grow bananas. You have to ship them there. And then the shipping, the bananas could be going bad. And then, so, some go bad there. And then you put them in the supermarket. And when they're on the shelf, they have a certain shelf life. So then they're going bad there. Whereas, like, if you can prevent the browning,
Mm-hmm.
then you can prolong the life of the banana somewhat naturally and without any bad effects. Then you just have that can maybe like cut costs. They said it has positive greenhouse effects for emission too. And it prolongs the transport life, the shelf life, all these things. So to your point, you mentioned maybe not in first world countries but other parts of the world where you can have this abundance maybe, and then just more food to, again, promote humanity, which sounds great. And in doing that, things like prolonging the shelf life of food or just the lifespan of whatever foods that we consume, they say they also have effects of preventing diseases, or even the animals that eat the foods, they promote their health. And then those animals that we
Mm.
may eat, that through the trickle down effect, it's better for us as well, because now these animals are less disease ridden, the plants are less disease ridden. And it's also crazy. This is not necessarily the banana, but they're saying some genetic modification in plants, like, what was it? It said it can prevent like drought proofing these things. So like in the extreme heat or high weathers where plants
Oh,
or
interesting.
or agriculture typically doesn't thrive, they can now withstand those conditions. And I'm like, again, mind blowing. So not only are plants more abundant, in some cases healthier, or they're providing more nutrients, or the nutrients they do provide, they produce at a higher level. They also are now more resistant to famine and like disease and drought, and they're
Hmm.
healthier for the animals that consume them. It's like the list is pretty extensive on what the gene editing in the plant and agriculture space can do as well, which is why like I'm glad we touched on that a bit too.
That oh man, that's crazy. Just thinking about all the benefits, but it's scary at the same time because usually with something so great, I feel like it has a potential of going down the wrong path and becoming something that could be harmful to society or
Of
humans or the
course.
planet or
Yes. Yeah. And we talked about, the health benefits, like, some medical stuff and some with the fruits, some stuff, I guess, in the food space, health. Like with obviously this stuff would cost to genetically edit, and I'm sure as it becomes more widely accepted or regulated, maybe those costs will go down. But there's like economic effects to this too. If these foods are more abundant, we might see, I mean, you kind of talked about the eggs. Those prices got inflated due to some health or things in the food chain, whether it was the chickens or what happened with the bad eggs, whatever. But now you could maybe drive the prices down for some of these foods if they're more abundant, or I don't know, maybe they do go up because they're labeled as GMO or genetically modified, or they're now some exclusive tomato, or I don't know. But I don't know which way it would
mm,
affect depending on what happens. I can't see the future, but I'm just noting that there will be some trickle down like economics effects to this stuff too, which I don't know, could be good or bad. We'll see, I guess.
yeah. I guess that is
Yeah.
definitely a legitimate concern. One of the drawbacks of the technology today, because with the sickle cell example I was talking about
Hmm.
earlier, it was for it was a girl, it was like a teenager in Britain or something like that.
Okay.
And her treatment cost over $1 million. And you can't necessarily put a price on treating sickle cell or a disease that
Hmm.
once thought incurable, that's very harmful to the body. I don't want to, you can't really put a price to that. But with the treatment being $1 million, like you got to imagine a very, very select few can have access to these, life altering technology, basically. And if you ask me, I would like to think, it should be covered under some sort of insurance, but I mean, you know how the insurance industry works, right? I just
Yeah.
don't necessarily see that happening.
Unfortunately.
And another concern is we're obviously talking about life-saving technology at this point, but you have to natural course of thought in this around this topic is in the future, how could this technology be used? And a lot of use cases in the future might be just for not necessarily survival, but just like a cosmetic gene editing or gene
Hmm.
enhancement. For example, a gene that's linked to making you taller. I don't think
Right.
they can naturally or perfectly say, hey, if I give you this gene, then you're going to be 6'2". But I don't think they can do that. But I think they can say with this gene, you are more likely, or your kid will more likely be taller than otherwise not. Same thing, like your kid will
Right.
have higher IQ than otherwise not. Or, it's like, oh, you can have blue eyes. That gene's going to cost blah, blah, blah. So one of the big concern is the gap between the rich and the poor and the access to this technology. Right now it's life-saving, so I don't necessarily, it doesn't bother me that the rich will have this technology. It's still in the experimental phase, super expensive. If it works for them, like why not use it? But in the future, it's scary because people with money might be able to, just make designer babies in quote unquote. And I
Hmm.
think there was like a Netflix documentary that talked about it. And I don't, like I said, all these technologies are going to the sci-fi realm. And I don't think this is out of the conversation to rule out, this technology will be used to just make some like life enhancements. I want my foot to be a little bit bigger, make this change, blah, blah, and then now I got bigger feet. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I am a little bit scared as the ultra rich or just the wealthy people in general will have the ability to, in theory, make their children physically, mentally, I don't want to say better, but increased odds of making them better. That is a crazy, scary thought.
Yeah, dude. Okay. Yes. I have to, dude. I'm gonna have, we're gonna I have to segue this into the ethics. Like it, if not now, this is just the perfect transition. And I'm so glad you kind of brought that up for the cost because that does, I mean, that could, right, create a super divide where if we were to make a hypothetical scenario and we just played it out to the furthest extent, and you have all the people that are above, in this certain category of money doing all these genetic edits, and then there's the other people that just quite frankly can't afford it. Like you could see, because right, like in current society, we have certain divides, social, economic, or whatever. But I think the gap is I'll say small to medium. But if you play that out across a couple generations of this genetic, I'll even say enhancement, not even modification, like that divide could get insane. And then we're not just seeing it in like social and financial divides. We're seeing like physical capability divide. Just it could go to a scary place.
So with what's the word for it? Just cosmetic gene editing, I guess.
Cosmetic, yeah, yeah,
Just a
yeah.
nice
And
to
that's what
have
something I
kind
was
of
gonna ask you.
stuff.
Yep, yep. Mm-hmm.
Yep. Like in majority of the first world countries, I think the as a culture, as a societies, the ethics and morality level is high enough to realize, hey, like this is not right. There's gonna be some kind of regulation, but most likely it's gonna be a very, very regulated space. I could
Mm-hmm.
see that in the United States, Great Britain, Japan, Korea, and countries like that. But what I'm very scared of is other first world countries that they don't necessarily care about ethics and morality. And like I mean, I'll just go ahead and say it. China is usually like one of those countries that they try to get the mission done I don't want to say regardless of the cost, but the cost is often not as an important factor, let's just say.
Mm-hmm.
So once this technology becomes, I don't want to say abundant, but just much more research, much more well
Sure.
known, and the things that they could possibly do,
Cool.
like they could be making Yao
Super
Ming
soldier.
level people with crazy genetics to take over the world. Right? I mean, that's kind of far fetched, but it could be a scenario that could play out over multi-generational gene editing, with that being enhanced as they have kids, and their kids are already combination of two gene edited parents, but then the baby also gets gene edited to make their, I guess, something that came out less than ideal. That's going to be corrected. And just imagine over 10 generations, like they're going to have crazy, crazy people. And I don't,
Yes.
that's a scary thought that I don't know how it's going to end up.
Yes, dude. It takes me back to the movies where in Captain America, which I know you haven't seen, but known as like the American super soldier who takes this serum and now he looks like a human, he's still human, but he's just advanced in certain ways, bigger, faster, stronger. And it's like, all right, we're kind of tiptoeing into that realm. And based on what you said, B, I have a question for you, but first I want to baseline two terms that I learned in looking at this stuff. The two types of edits, right? And I'm going to read it so I don't butcher it, but somatic edits versus germline edits. I don't know if I'm saying that right, but I'm going to read these and then I want to get your opinion on something. So you have germline edits, which involve altering the DNA of a reproductive cells, such as like sperm, eggs, or embryos, meaning these changes are heritable and passed down to future generations, right? So these are things that are edited that can be
Mhm.
inherited, whereas somatic edits are modify the DNA of non-reproductive cells within an individual, and these changes are not passed on to offspring. Right. So you made a joke like maybe
Mhm.
like making you have somebody and I want bigger feet, like you get some edits and now you got big feet. Do you think there is an ethical difference or like one is better than the other of if you get somatic edits, which are, just to you, just the individual versus germline edits, which can be passed down? Like, do you think there's an ethical discussion in genetic engineering, period, but in those two types, do you think, one's maybe better than the other or more preferable, or I'm curious on your thoughts on the two there.
Yeah, I think there has to be a difference, right? Because, sorry, I'm gonna get a little bit political, but this is how I'm
Okay.
thinking about it. So just bear with me.
Yes.
But for the transgender cases, right? The people that transition from man to woman or woman to man, whichever the case, like that, I don't necessarily agree with, but I don't really, I mean, it doesn't really bother me that happens in society, but
Hmm.
that just affects you. And I mean, maybe the people around, but like genetically, it only affects you.
Genetically, yes.
Right. But making that change that could alter your bloodline, your future family tree, like now you are affecting millions and millions of people. That's, you can imagine the family tree just branching out
Right.
over 1,000 years.
Yeah.
That's going to be a lot of people. But now that you are changing something that they didn't necessarily consent to because they're people from the future, I I feel like could cross a lot more lines ethically, rather than the changes that's going to only affect you.
Interesting. Ooh, so you said, affecting those people that are in the future that don't have the choice to be affected is, a conversation in itself. Which, and then I'm just playing devil advocate. This also might be political take, but like if you don't exist, do you even is a choice even? This is a rhetorical. Like, you don't need to answer this, but like if you don't exist, do you even have a choice? Like that could be some type of counterpoint. Just something to think about. But I'm gonna go back to the somatic edits and the germline edits. I'm messing these names all up. I do think still overall like agreeing with you that if you were just doing something to yourself, I mean, who like your body, your life, your choice, sure. And I think there is a ethical discussion to be had there, but I think it's a bigger discussion when you're doing it, that affects a lineage, right? Like, I mean, pretty much restating what you're saying, that affects you and beyond. Because now, and I also think that perpetuates that gap that we were just talking about. Like, you could be positively or negatively, I mean, in theory, you really don't know. You could be affecting your lineage, which could further the gap. And then this is where we can dive into the ethics debate of like, is it like morally correct to be changing something that, like, is directly going against nature's intent, uh affecting society in a way that is financially driven? Is it unfair? All these other questions start popping up. But I did just want to bring up the types of two types of genetic edits, in the sense of, just affecting us or affecting the lineage. So I don't know. I think I agree with you on just entering those thoughts into the conversation of, is it right or not? And I think I read somewhere it was saying that scientists aren't really comfortable also doing the germline edits that could have trickle down effects, which, I mean, I don't think they should. Like,
Mm.
that's a insane concept. I think that's harder to regulate, and I don't think it's quite there yet. We're even if the technology is there, if that's like widely accepted, but the changing of the eye color or something, I think that I have read cases of that happening. But again, that has like
Yeah.
less
There was
ramifications, so it's like
a
kind of more justifiable.
yeah. There was this Chinese doctor that got caught, and he admitted that without approval, he took this baby twins at childbirth, like while in the hospital, and they made
Mhm.
CRISPR edits to make them HIV resistant. And that, this doctor, I mean, he went to prison for, I mean, I don't know how long he's in China. I don't necessarily know the legal system over there, but like, he did it without approval. And this is a crazy, unfortunate case because, like, it has been documented that they don't necessarily know what's going to happen. Like, it's just too early of a stage. So you got to think,
Yeah.
maybe they are HIV resistant. Who knows, right? But that's the best case
Yeah,
scenario.
we
But
don't.
like,
Right.
worst case scenario, they could have a lot of complications in their life because without their consent, again, with someone else just being selfish, just trying out something. And this is a very unfortunate case, but one fortunate case is the two girls that was twins. Their identity definitely remained uh, a private, so no one, or I don't say
Okay,
no
good.
one, but no, they don't. The public doesn't know who they are, so they get to live a regular life, which is the fortunate side of the
Right.
story. But it's just not the right thing to do something without anyone's consent, just for your own personal
Yes.
agenda that's not hasn't been tested. So I'm glad he went to prison.
Yes, for sure. And I mean, I guess that kind of goes into the safety space too. But yeah, I think ethically, right, we could say, certainly, I mean, that's a super black and white case. Like, if you're making these, whether it's in the name of science or not, if you're making these edits or conducting these procedures without the consent of the person, or if they're infant or whatever, the consent of their guardians or parents or whatever, that's, I would say, objectively wrong. But now, is it I'll say, right, if people are getting these edits regardless. And there's the narrative in genetic engineering of humans playing a godlike role. Like, right, we were never supposed to be able to control how humans evolve. That's a very natural thing, the evolution. Like, we have reached a point where we have technology where we can manipulate evolution. And I'm sure that goes against some biblical teachings. Ethically, is that like, were we I don't want to say intended to do this? Like, nobody really has that answer. But, and I'm probably gonna ramble a bit, but you can make the argument of this could be the natural evolution of humans. Like, humans evolved to a point where we created this technology, and now we're leveraging this technology to evolve the species in this way, in an artificial way, right? But like, there's such an interesting conversation that I think whether it moves forward, and whether it moves forward in the correct way, comes down to a matter of safety and ethics. And I kind of want to explore the ethics space with you.
Yeah. I have a take on the natural piece. That's I think
Mhm.
I agree with you, and it just that I think my take is something that I had just haven't heard of that much, and you kind of already touched on it, but I just want to kind of say my piece on it as well. But there's always this conversation of whatever the humans are doing, is this natural or not?
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
I get the perspective of what they're saying. Like, yeah, like, I get it. Like, if humans weren't alive, like the world wouldn't be like this, and then we shouldn't be able to control these things through technology. I get the idea, but it's interesting because, like, let's, like, we have chimps today, right? That can use stones to, uh, I don't know, crack open food or something like that, right? That's a form of technology. So, would you call that unnatural? Because, I mean, without those apes or monkeys, like, rocks wouldn't just naturally go into the air and crack open a nut or something, right? So is that unnatural? Which I don't. I think it's definitely part of nature. That's part of nature. And in the same lines of thinking, I believe that humans are part of nature.
Mm.
So whatever the humans, because we are part of nature, whatever we do is also part of nature. And
Ooh.
just like how you said, I think humans are in a place where we can leverage technology to manipulate certain things that we deem unnatural, but that is part of the natural progression of nature, I think. As you get
Interesting.
advanced species, like, why why is it out of nature to say that this can't or this won't happen? What I'm trying to say is everything that we experience today in real life is part of nature, regardless of CRISPR or this AI technology that's going to be crazy in the future. So, with that being said, I don't think this technology is going to slow down. If anything, it's going to speed up. And because it's not going to slow down, the more important question is whether it's not about, hey, is CRISPR right or wrong, right? Because some things, yeah, we can say it's right or wrong, but there is right or wrong to pretty much every technology. Like, think of the internet. Like, internet is a
Mhm.
is a right in a good way, not like right in the sense that you have a human right to do something, but right or wrong, right? In so many ways, right? Like, it makes
Yeah.
life so much easier. And I can do this podcast with you while sitting, across the country. But at the same time, internet is
Right.
used for child trafficking, a lot of murder planning, how to obtain illegal information, right? So, like, there is pros and cons for everything, but because there's pros and cons at like,
Mm.
such great extremist ends of for the technology, there's gonna be use cases for everyone, which I think CRISPR falls along that line. Therefore, trying to ban it is almost more dangerous, I think, than
Ooh.
making sure the regulation and the infrastructure is set up properly to let this technology prosper, if that makes sense. Because if we ban it, like,
Okay.
people are gonna still the technology is still gonna advance underground. It might just advance slower, but then once this technology becomes, much more useful to everyday life and it's still illegal, like, people might be doing it in a non-safe place, like outside the lab at their home. Like, you buy a little CRISPR kit to make your eyes blue at home, but your home is not a sanitized place that's in a controlled environment, therefore it could cause complications. So, yeah, with that being said, I believe with the nature conversation, I think it's more harmful to ban these technologies for the future rather than trying to improve it in a way that it's safe. Does that make sense?
Yes. Okay. I hear you. I'm gonna maybe propose some counterpoints and just I don't know, points of discussion. From
Mm-hmm.
and you said a lot of good stuff. Okay, from the natural standpoint, right? Like you're saying, we are natural. I also going back to the chimp and the rock theory, I don't know if I agree with that because rocks are made. truly natural. I hear what you're saying about like everything we make is natural because like we are of nature, but Nate, I guess what I'm trying to say is rocks can be found without any intervention. Like a rock exists, like truly in nature. Like nobody made a rock. It is of the earth. Whereas the stuff we're making now is made from us who are from the earth. But it's like a secondary effect from the earth. You know what I mean? Like we are of the earth and we make whatever, therefore whatever's of the earth is still like twice removed. So relate I'm gonna take that logic and put it in the AI space because you brought up AI. Like we are developing AI, which will develop artificial intelligence, which is predicted to evolve into artificial general intelligence, which is predicted to evolve into artificial superintelligence. Is all those evolutions, are those natural as well because we developed it? Which I think there are even arguments that like it was always here and we're discovering it, but I'm not going to go there. But like is artificial intelligence and everything that comes from it also natural
I
in
do
your
think so.
opinion?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. I'm leaning towards disagreeing with that, but I would have to think on it because if it becomes, I don't want to say self-replicating, but I guess my thing is the thing I have a problem answering is where do we draw the line? Like is there a line? Do you think, I guess, there should ever be a line drawn in biological engineering or is there ever should be a line drawn in artificial intelligence if it is truly natural? Like I think that question would have to be answered for me to develop my answer, like if it's natural or not, because I think at some point these things could get to a point where they're out of hand and they're truly unnatural, in which case
No,
I would say personally the
you.
development should stop or
I think. I think based on your argument, and I know you're just playing devil's advocate. I understand, so I'm just countering that point. So nothing personal, but with that
no,
point being
definitely not.
said, that's with the flawed assumption that whatever nature has is good because the the meteor that struck Earth that wiped out the dinosaurs,
Hmm.
like if that were to come today, that is natural, right? You would say that's
Hmm.
natural. But because it's natural, are we gonna let it happen or will we create nuclear weapons to shoot that meteor down? Right? So you are altering the natural sequence of events that's about to happen, but it's for a greater good. And you also brought up something along the lines of like because rocks were already there in nature as it appears and it was used in that way that it's natural versus the technology that we create is more on the unnatural side because it's not naturally occurring on Earth, I guess, and without intermediary. So
Sure.
that I'm just trying to step it back super rudimentary, right? So would honey made from bees that's not naturally occurring on Earth, but it's naturally occurring because bees made it, is that natural or unnatural?
It's a great counterpoint. I would say that's natural.
Right. So with that, like I work in the semiconductor industry and we make computer chips where, based on the lines of thinking, I could imagine a lot of people saying, oh, semiconductor computer chips are unnatural. But we make semiconductor chips from all natural occurring elements. We take sand, silicon to make the bases of these chips.
Hmm.
We are just an intermediary in this. We're the bees for making the honey, and the honey is the chips, right? So, with that same line of thinking, I would say semiconductor chips are natural because nature created a highly sophisticated, intelligent creature like the humans. They were
Yes.
able to produce this technology with, I mean, like we didn't create, like we didn't like make, we didn't like come up with, dark matter that we created out of thin air, right? Like everything is natural, everything is naturally occurring, and we just manipulated those things in a way to make a chip that turns one
Okay.
or
Yeah.
zero very fast with electricity. So what do you think about that?
I like that. So is everything natural and things are just discovered? Like everything existed in some form and it's either developed, discovered, combined to create new things, but it's kind of like matter, right? Like matter can't be created or destroyed.
Mhm.
It could just be manipulated, right? So is anything unnatural? Like what, give me an example of something that is unnatural.
No, I mean, this
Everything's
is
being
getting
developed from
like
stuff that's already here.
spiritual,
Like
but
nothing's unnatural.
just
Yeah.
yeah. Depending, so I guess depending on how you define nature or natural, if it's something
Mhm.
that nature, meaning the earth or the universe, physical things, already set in place, like the trajectory of that, if that's natural, then I would say everything that we are doing is all natural. And the only thing I could
Right.
imagine being unnatural is kind of getting sophisticated, like I said, like more like religious related, but I would say God and that space, that realm is unnatural because it sits outside of nature. Um, but besides that,
Mm.
I would say everything is natural in that case, that with the assumption that people use nature in the definition that I described it. It could not be.
Okay.
So it just kind of depends on the definition.
Okay. I think that's good. So and it just gives us a space to operate in this conversation. We baseline some things. So we talked about if this genetic engineering, bringing it back, right, is natural. Now we can talk about is it ethical, which which is in layman's terms, is it right or wrong by I guess humanity standards? Um, and I think to answer this question, I guess I would have to pose another question. But because I would argue I would argue that genetic engineering could be unethical. But then to get to the root of it, we'd have to talk
I
about
agree.
why. But like I said, I have a deeper question I want to ask to kind of get at the spirit of this, and I want to see if you have any thoughts on is it ethical or not before I ask my question.
Okay, go ahead, shoot.
No, I was gonna say before I ask, do you have any do you think it's ethical? I mean, it's right, and it's probably somewhere in between because it's not always so black and white, but do you have any thoughts on if it's ethical or not, or do you just want me to ask my question first?
I could, I mean, I like I said, because there's pros and cons, I could see certain applications of technology being ethical or while maintaining the ethics label, while other use cases might be crossing that line and becoming unethical. And I just, like I said, for me right now, without giving too much thought, the line would
Yeah.
be drawn at cosmetic versus life saving. But again, like
Okay.
you can follow different models of ethics. That could be subjective as well. That's a hard.
Yeah.
That's a very hard one.
I want to I want to start from where you just brought it up, cosmetic versus life saving. I think that's simple enough and great because it's just getting at is it done for a good cause or not, right? That's pretty simple. Like if something is
Mhm.
done with the intent to better, well, I'll start with save a life. I think objectively that's good. Change your eye color, making your foot bigger. That is a want, not a need. Therefore, you are playing with,
Mhm.
again, I would argue nature, but like we said, it's all natural. So that based on how we defined it is controversial. But it's not. I'll just simply say it's not needed. Therefore, it could be unethical, right? But now I said if it's needed to save a life or to make a life better. But then when we talk about making a life better, that could also be subjective because now
Mhm.
um you're getting into uh like who deems what's quote unquote, using air quotes, better. And I think looking into this topic, one thing that arose was eugenics, and it's like optimizing human life, right? Like someone trying to make the perfect human species, which is obviously controversial. And then, there's notable times in history where somebody tried to make what they thought was the perfect human species. So it's like, how do we talked about sickle cell trait in this episode. We talked about Down syndrome and how CRISPR could reverse or get rid of some of those things, but because we have genetic I can't even say genetic variability, but a counter argument could be made that we are decreasing diversity if we're trying to get rid of all of these things that, we deem bad. So there's a conversation there where is the eradication of diversity, or not even eradication, but decreasing diversity, like that in itself is unethical, even if we're shooting at getting rid of certain diseases, or you could even say should we minimize diseases, not get rid of it, because though learning from those diseases could cause something else that helps the evolution of humanity. You know what I mean? There's so many. This is where it branches off into so many lanes of that. One thing
Mm.
makes it better, but as a result, we could be making it bad. And I think this gets at the root of a point I'm trying to make, is that bettering one thing, like one known effect, could have one or more unknown effects. And until we know those effects, someone could argue that it is not right or not ethical, because we're tampering with humans as we know it, which could have an unforeseen reaction. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I agree with that.
That's what gets super gray and hazy. Yeah.
That's why very similar to AI in this subject. Like I said, I'm usually pro small government, less regulation, depending on what it is. Like I'm more supportive of that. But in certain cases, AI being one of them, and definitely gene editing is within the same plate as well. But I personally want a lot of government and agency regulations, not even at the country level, at the world level,
Yeah.
because just it it could be a crazy effect of, let's say, in China you can get this gene editing that's legal there, and you go there and get it. It's like, you go to Turkey for hair transplant, right? Like Turkey is like really known for the highest tech in hair transplant. You go there, you come back, and you have kids, and now you affect that country as well. So that's why I really, really, really think it would be very prudent for the human species to at least have, I don't know, like the government, like a world, like organization at the world level, like NATO, I guess, things like that could control this technology and hold countries responsible, making sure they're abiding by the laws.
So, going to my personal opinion, I agree with that. And with both, AI and genetic engineering, there needs to be a global organization or global agreements, and we all move together forward. It's unfortunate that in a lot of cases that can't happen, because there is this race, right? We talked about the arms race. There's probably going to be an AI race where if you stop at a country level, somebody is going to try to be better and move faster, which is why I agree that it needs to be a global consensus. Um, and you mentioned something earlier, if something is stopped or outlawed, it's going to happen on the black market or underground anyways. But I think in some cases, you still need that regulation, even if it's happening underground, because now if it's not like federally or globally mandated, even if it's happening underground, it's not happening widespread. Like you said, it slows down. It's not happening really fast. So it's like onesie, twosie cases, which we can manage, whether as if it's, they give the thumbs up on a global scale and it's happening in the masses, it becomes out of hand. It's harder to regulate. And then that's where it gets to the point where it's like, how do we control it? It's something, if there is an unknown repercussion to one gene edit that's being made across the globe, like it's hard to regulate that or mandate that, on such a massive scale. So yeah, I agree that,
Hmm.
and that's where it's hard for me when saying like, hey, should we move this forward or not? I would say yes, if you know the outcome. If we can say to a certain degree of certainty, we know if we use this, only this will happen, or there's a 99.9% chance only this will happen. If we can't answer that question with a high degree of certainty, like, hey, we're gonna cure this thing, but this might happen. I think just that we need to stay in the research and the development phase. But you know what I'm saying? In these AI space and
Yeah.
in this genetic engineering space, when can you ever be that certain? Like, I don't know that you can be.
You want to get,
And
yeah,
then
yeah, you're right.
it. So
Yeah.
that's where it gets hard for me.
Yeah, because I was thinking about it, like you said, if it's if it's banned, the cases that could happen are manageable, but after you said that, I could see both cases. Now the technology is just introduced. I don't think there's a turning point back because if it's
Okay.
if it's if it's public, not banned, but just super highly regulated, technology will advance, but then there will be bad actors in the space. But even if
Always.
it's banned, the technology will come eventually. And then I could see very dangerous cases where some group of scientists or smart people in their basement figure out how to successfully uh, operate or just use CRISPR to change the what was the method that changes the offspring?
Germline edits.
Germline edits. Like they could be the only group of people in the world, maybe like 5 people in the entire world that knows how to do germline editing, and they do it to people, they do it to their families, and over time that's gonna spread like how the human just
Okay.
imagine billions and billions and billions of people intermingling and creating kids over a long period of time. That's going to
Right.
affect humanity as well. So in either cases, I don't want to say we're screwed, but like either cases, we need to take a crazy, careful, research based approach.
Okay. Like you said, since the technology is here, it's going to happen. It's either does it happen fast or slow? And in the case where it's not, it's not globally or nationally accepted, it'll happen underground. I think if it's happening underground, it's happening slower, and the more time, it's like the decision making space we have, the better. I think without knowing all the effects, I rather have it happen slower so we can while it is happening, right? Because we said it's gonna happen, we can at least get more knowledgeable on it and conduct more research. Whether as if it's happening fast and it's just like, hey, we know 70-80% what's gonna happen, but it's happening wide scale, and 20% we don't know what's gonna happen. So B, this is for me where it gets interesting because I was asking myself, do I think it's two-part? Do I think just overall, which is a very nuanced question, engineering is ethical, and do I think it should be continued? And in trying to answer that question myself, I had this. My answer was only if this benefits, furthers slash benefits human life, or like the purpose for human life. So then my question within my question was, okay, well then what is the purpose of human life? And it's easy. My natural reaction was like go on the internet, ask, see, Google, ChatGPT, what's the purpose of human life? But I really sat down and tried to ask myself, all right, no, I want to answer. I want to come up on my own what I think the purpose of human life is. And I kept going back and forth and creating different like versions of my answer. And the thing I settled on, this is probably a developing answer, but the thing I settled on was I think the purpose of life is to create on a level that promotes growth of humanity. And I'm gonna let that sit for a minute. To create a level, excuse me, the purpose of humanity, the purpose of life is to create on a level that promotes growth of humanity. I wrote that down, right? So at face value, genetic engineering does allow us to further human life, right? Like I think at its spirit, at its core, is trying to, I mean, sure, even in the plant space, right? It's trying to make plants better for animals, which make it better for humans, or make plants more abundant or better for human consumption. Or if we're just genetically modifying humans to get rid of human disease and get rid of human abnormalities. But in doing that, are we eliminating the diversity of plants and the genetic variability that also stimulates human growth and development in the long run? You know what I mean? Like it's like it kind of goes back. Um Again, for me, it's if it furthers the purpose of human life, then I am on board with it. But I think it gets to a point where the development gets so far that it's like the answer is yes initially, but then it gets to a point where it could be stunting human growth or development as a whole, as in the world. And whatever that point is, that's when I would disagree with it. And I think for me, I can
Hmm.
articulate it better. It's hard for
I'm
me
getting
to
tripped up on your.
articulate. Okay. I heard part of what you said. You said you're getting tripped up on the definition. And I did have iterations before I got to that
Or
definition, right? So I think the per go ahead.
No, I'm
I
getting
think I only heard part of what you
go
said.
ahead and say your definitions because I'm I, like we didn't we didn't rehearse this, but your definition is
Yeah, yeah,
actually
yeah.
very close to what I was thinking about. But go ahead and say your
Okay.
definition. But I'm still getting tripped up on a point, so please come back to me after.
Okay. Okay. It is to create on a level that promotes the growth of humanity. And I wanna walk that back a little bit because before I got to that, my definition was um the purpose of human life is to create relationships and to procreate and to continue to learn and develop. But I tried to combine all those because to procreate, right, that is creation. I think part of the human purpose is to create life. Um, I think the other aspect was to create relationships. I think we are naturally social creatures, so we are made innately to socialize, and a byproduct of that is creating relationships. I just try to think in all ways when I think people being wealthy and successful, not monetary wealth, but like in every instance there's a relationship. Like in our modern society, people want to find a partner. That's a relationship. People want to create groups or businesses. That is relationships. That's people. People want to procreate. That is both procreating and extending another relationship, right? So in every instance I could think of, relationships were beneficial. So I was like, okay, that's another part of creation. And then my last one, just to learn and adapt and develop, that is also creating in the sense of ideas. That is creation of ideas and thought, which leads to I think this is all my personal opinion, right? The betterment of humanity. So I took all those three and I tried to combine them, which is how I got to my definition that the purpose of life is to create on a level that promotes growth of humanity. Because in all those examples, you can promote on a level that's not good for humanity, which is why I added that little clause in the end, right? Like you can have relationships that end up being bad or with bad intent, right? Like you can have an ISIS level, a terrorist group where you're creating relationships to detract from the population or detract from humanity, or a Hitler like example where you're trying to eradicate humans for what the sense of another group of humans, right? Or you can overpopulate and maybe have too much kids, and you take that in an example where it looks like, I don't know, overpopulating the earth. That's a very drawn out example. Or in the idea example, right? You're creating ideas where I know maybe you do have an AI which develops an artificial super intelligence, which now is thinking on its own, and it goes into a self-preservation mode where it's trying to eradicate humans down to where it only needs the minimum level of humans. So ASI can thrive on its own, right? So again, just to sum it all up, I said it's to create, but only to create if it promotes the growth of humanity. If you're creating and it doesn't promote the growth of humanity, I don't think that's aligned with my definition of the purpose of life. I'm sorry, that was a lot. I tried to say it slowly and concisely, but that's how
No,
I got to my
I
definition.
th-
I kept having steps that like got me there.
I think you articulated that better than 99% of the population.
Sorry, go ahead.
That is really good because I was like thinking about it before, like when you originally asked the question, but there has to be an element of biology in there, which is the procreation part. And like Homo sapiens, we are like, again, this is a biblical reference, but without religion, I think this
Okay.
is true. They say we have the ultimate creator, that we are made in his image as a creator. Therefore, we create things, relationships, technology, kids, right? And with creation, I think we have the enough curiosity in our DNA to advance society that ends up to human prosperity, which is just pretty much what you said.
Yeah.
So I agree with everything you said. And with that line of thinking, oh man, I also see your point where CRISPR could go down a wrong path, but I also think that's the same story with a lot of technology. And
Mhm.
it just humans have to realize in order to prosper for the whole human society that they cannot mess up on this technology. And if they do mess up, there has to be damage control systems already set in place to, not make those things happen. For instance, you brought up Hitler and the concentration camps. We knew that was not good for society, so we all got together in World War II. Was like, yo, like let's stop this, and we made it. We stopped it. So similar lines of thinking. I would say CRISPR used properly would enhance and prosper human life to a great extent.
Yes. So, and I would agree. Like and then this is a great way, I think, as we're winding down here to say, like, do we, me and you, think it should continue or not? And I also think it could benefit life, keeping some very key aspects at the forefront of its development, which, we kind of talked about. And I think at some point some lines will need to be drawn, but I don't think we're there. And I wouldn't
Mhm.
I don't think I would personally like advocate for stopping the development of genetic engineering. It just, for all the reasons we named, it needs to be careful along the way of development, which it sounds like the obvious thing to say. But I think it has to align with the purpose of human life for me to agree with genetic engineering. And that's my piece on it.
I think you put it very beautifully. I have no complaint. I literally, yeah, I was like, I have no addition or subtraction to what you just said.
I'm glad you asked me though to kind of like restate it and elaborate, because I wanted to make sure my answer is kind of confusing if I don't articulate the iterations of how I got there. Uh, so that was good that I had to kind of like go back, and it made me like rethink through that. But yeah, I think
Mhm.
genetic engineering, like you said, right? It's kind of like Pandora's box. It's open. It's not going to get repackaged. Like, it's out here. The technology exists. I think we're at a space of how fast it's going to advance, and very importantly, how safe it's going to advance and how regulated it's going to be, which I do not have the answer. It's hard to see, but yeah, I think we got some good conversation around about genetic modifying.
Yeah, dude. I do
I
want to
feel
say
good.
one thing
So I'm
that
like
I was
sweating.
really thinking about, and it's more on the jokes line, but I was thinking about it.
Okay.
So I do want to say it. So
Yeah. Heck
how
yeah.
we kind of started talking about, how all this like technology is going to the sci-fi space. And
Yeah.
how like aliens are depicted in books and like conspiracy theories and even movies and TV shows, like
Yeah.
they are this like like light green bluish creature that has no hair, big eyes. They have the arms and the legs, but then their genital area is just like a blob of skin. It's just like regular skin with nothing on it. And they have big heads and they're super smart, right? Like that's like the general description of it.
I would agree.
And I'm like, how we were talking about, I forgot, maybe we were talking in person or on another episode, but they're coming up with technologies where you don't even have to be pregnant anymore. Like it's like lab grown babies with the the sperm and the egg from the father and the mother. And it could get to a day where you just go to a hospital on the weekend and be like, oh yeah, that's our kid growing, and so like you don't experience pregnancy. And just going through this CRISPR stuff, I could naturally like I'm just thinking about the alien structure. I'm like, that might be much more efficient for humans to go that way. And you can slowly over generation go through this CRISPR type of thing and end up in that sort of body where you have the big brain you need to see, and you have the limbs, but like you don't really need reproductive organs. You just need to have sperm and the egg. Maybe by then, like humans are, you think we could be living to like 500 years old. So maybe just like the reproduction isn't much of a concern at that point. Yeah, I don't know. Like, obviously that's kind of far fetched, but I was like, what if just aliens are just like civilizations that just got advanced a couple billion years ahead of us, and they're just kind of visiting other places. It's all consistent. All the alien structure figures are,
It is consistent, and in that way, it's scary. And I don't, yeah, like we're playing and we're laughing and we're like joking about it, but again, so many other things we've laughed and joked about. And I'm gonna take it what you said, not a step further, but I'm gonna hone in on one piece of it that could make it more real. Uh, So you said, right, like the reproductive organs not being needed and that flat patch in the genital area, which I think is so funny. But I know I have a very like as you were saying that I was constructing that visual image of the big head, the flat genitals, the arms and legs, or sometimes they have multiple arms and legs, right? I'm just building that in my head. But think about, right, for the definition I gave, or my belief in furthering this is only if it aligns with the purpose of human life and like kind of like the preservation of it, I guess. Pregnancies for women are known to be, right, it's not an easy thing. It's difficult. Some people die giving birth. There's miscarriages. There's emotional trauma after that affects women's lives negatively. Imagine if you didn't have to lose lives because you're not getting pregnant. You were emotionally more well off because you don't go through the trauma of bearing a child or the post-traumatic stress. Imagine if you're not having miscarriages because it's scientifically down to a T of how to incubate a baby outside of the womb. You know, you're getting rid of all these bad things, but you're still genetically, you still need the man's DNA, you still need the woman, like you're still procreating. So it's meeting the intent, but you're actually getting rid of these bad things that come with pregnancy. Is again, it's me saying that sounds like I'm advocating for that. I'm not. I'm just stating things that could be true. And it's weird. I'm just leave it at
It is
that.
very weird.
It's insane. Yeah. But no, you make a good point, dude. I don't We might have the long ears. We might. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean,
We'll see.
we got machines everywhere. Like, why do we need to even be big? We just can be like a 3-foot creature that has big brains and that can think really crazy stuff.
Facts. Big brain. A lot of big brain activity. Man, that was a crazy episode. I feel good. What else? You got any other good conspiracies for us or anything?
No, no, no. I'm just thinking that like literally through like midway through the episode, I was like, I just want to say it before before we
No, I'm
go.
glad you did. I'm glad you did. Be, I'm super glad you did. All right, dope. Man, all right, I feel good. My brain's on high. I'm literally sweating. I feel juiced up. Um, Dude, I love talking with you as always. Hopefully, anybody listening like got something out of this. I think this is something everybody can have an opinion on and promotes really good conversation, no matter where you lie. If you have an opinion or not, so like let us know in the comments on all platforms, and we'll catch you next week as always.